Welcome, guys. We are back for another episode of Grumpy Bearded Men, and we have no idea what we're going to talk about today, so this should get interesting. Let's check in and see how the guys are doing here. Joe, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing excellent, man. Thank you.
Cool. Andy, you're looking mighty something there with that hat on, like you just got off the fisherman's boat or something. Did you bring in a good haul today?
Listen, as I am sure at least one or two people present or watching can attest to, when you are a baldy, the noggin gets cold. Gets cold. So that's all this is. I'm not attempting to set any fashion trends or anything of that nature. Just want to conserve body heat.
I can wear shorts down to neg 20, no problem. But I put a hat on my head once we're in the low 40s.
Yeah, I go down to like a 1, but when I go down to a 1, it really does. I can feel the difference. Yeah. So I'm ready for the warmer weather. We had a little taste of it, and then it got cold again on us. Oh, man. Let's see here. Can I tell you guys how much I despise time changes? Doesn't matter if it's the spring or the fall. I don't care if I'm losing an hour or gaining an hour. It just wreaks havoc on my sleep schedule and my dog's schedule. And I'm sure people who have kids, it all works the same way. Do you think we're ever going to just go and just keep on daylight savings time all year long? I think that's been the rumor.
Yeah. Well, I don't have a preference which one they go with, because ultimately it'll settle out. But yes, we have not been a civilization based around farming in quite some time. It's time to move on. If one is better for farmers, hey, I'm okay with them winning this one. They can take that moral victory. Just quit changing the damn clocks, man.
Yeah, I'm with Andy here.
Yeah. Tomorrow's going to be rough for me because we've had spring break this week. So my kids, my high school kids, I know they've been sleeping till noonish, 1 o'clock, and then they're going to be losing an hour of sleep in the morning too, as far as what their normal time would be. And I know they're just going to be zombies.
Yeah, ours isn't till about a month from now, actually. So
I still bet your first block will be zombies tomorrow because they're an hour off.
I'm lucky, though, that this semester, because we're block, I don't see my first students. I have a study hall, but I don't see my first students to teach till 11.
Hey, that's what time I start. I've got first block planning. I love it.
Yeah.
So I don't have to be on first thing in the morning, which is good. I used to be, and I'm still a morning person overall, but the older I've gotten, the less perky I am in the morning. I kind of do like having time to get things together and think about things. Yeah. So Joe, you and Andy both have been like doing some deep dives into the perfumery, cologne kind of ideas. And I want to hear a little bit about it because I've never been a cologne guy. Obviously, I have now fallen in love with the cologne aspect of the beard products. But I want to know a little bit about what you're talking about. I know you said you've been doing the deep dive and you're kind of tired of messing with it for a while, but I want to hear it. The world wants to hear what you've been doing.
Well, Andy, you go ahead and start off.
Well, I don't know. Probably 3-4 years ago now, everybody was doing collabs. And if I'm honest, most, not all, but most of the collabs that I was seeing kind of sucked. and so it made me kind of curious, what goes into this? And I started doing research on it, got some books because that's what nerds do, and read up on it, studied up on it, and started to realize that in a very basic level, all scents, whether it's your aftershave, your deodorant, your shampoo, your cologne, your beard products, they're all fragrances. And they all have, now there's really two different components. There's the aroma chemicals, and then there's essential oils. And a lot of times the aroma chemicals are made up of essential oil. But when you break it down, most beard products in some way kind of mimic the cologne effect. What we're using the word cologne here because cologne actually means something different in the fragrance world. It actually refers to concentration. So I hate to use the word cologne, but colloquial speaking, just being used in layman's term, yes, cologne. But as far as fragrances go, if you were to go into the store or any department store that has a perfume counter or fragrance counter, you would see the term cologne, but that's actually the lowest concentration of fragrance oils, perfume oils, whatever. They're kind of getting to the point now where they're creating new levels of strength, in part because of IFRA. So if you wore cologne back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, you could definitely remember guys that put on way too much. They were usually in high school. They were pretty obnoxious. Now you have to either purposefully buy something that is obnoxiously loud, or you paid a whole lot of money to get something that's obnoxiously loud to have that effect. It's extremely difficult to do now. Most of the colognes that guys our age would know are watered down now. And a lot, mostly due to IFRA. Some of the ingredients that were old standbys are now pretty much banned.
That's interesting.
And so they have.
Just me reflecting, because all I remember, because I'm not a cologne guy, never have been. I wore it like a couple times in high school. So obviously you tried it in high school, but also some other guys, other older men, and but back in the 80s, all I remember is being strong and have that kind of like alcohol bite to it. And then once I got into the beard stuff and somebody sent me a cologne scent, it was more like, I guess, like a Polo Red is now, which is more of like a sweeter kind of deal. And it doesn't have that real alcohol kind of bite to it. And my world was kind of opened up a little bit. It's like, oh, okay, I like this stuff. So this is different than what I remember. So I just want to reflect. I don't have a whole lot to add to the conversation. Hey, doggy.
Your cheaper ones, Brian, your poorly made ones are still going to have that alcohol bite to them.
Okay.
Still going to have that,
Yeah.
But to go off, like, for me, it's been like, okay, I'm good with the beer stuff. I've always been a cologne wearer. Now, it was always one at a time. And again, like Andy, I'm using the nomenclature here. Truly, we should be calling it perfume, but it's weird for men to call. I think maybe that's why the term fragrance was invented, because what we're wearing really is perfume. Okay. But I always one at a time, and, run out of one, buy a new one. And I didn't know about, I was always reacting off of the opening, which is the first smell you get, right? And I didn't realize there were things like dry down, like the scent shifted and nuances coming out after you get that first blast of aroma. So I'd always had one, and ironically, I had bought 4 going into school just because they smelled good at the time at a department store. And then the January of that school year, I started doing the beard stuff. So that stuff went into the closet, so to speak. I'd worn it a little bit, and then I did the beard stuff. And what I really, really like is like Andy, I've gotten 3 books just on history and other things. I think Andy probably approaches it more from the science side, and I'm more from the design art side as far as my reading has gone. Although I am very interested in the science side of this. I know that the little bit of science I've read is like Andy was saying, like modern perfumery as we know it started in the late 19th century. And like you said, there was mostly essential oils and natural things. And then as they started making chemicals that could mimic smell, we would see them pop up in detergents and soaps and deodorants, but the perfume world stayed away from those because it was artificial, right? And at some point, I don't know, because my learning is only so much right now. At some point, they decided, okay, let's let some of those kinds of scents in to the mix, you know. But what I have found and loved is that, for example, I'm going to give you two notes in beard products: leather and the evergreens. Okay. From all the leathers that I smelled, and I didn't smell a lot of them, they seem to be so heavy-handed that it scared me away from leather. All right, particularly that new leather. However, the three scents that I have gotten that are leather forward and have leather at the very top are so gorgeous. And the leather is there, but it's not smacking you in the face. And it made me rethink leather. So what I'm now wondering is like, okay, should I be revisiting?
But I agree with what he was saying for the most part. Although there's actually the oldest one that I know of that's still in production. There's one called 4711, and George Washington actually gave it to which Marquise was it? The Marquise that was heavily involved during the Revolutionary War. Oh God, I can't remember his last name.
I wasn't alive back then, Andy, like you were.
Yeah, but anyway, yeah, it's still around, but it's gone from a scent that people wear to pretty much. And I don't understand the appeal of this, but it's something that you can put on like right after the shower, and for 20 minutes you'll smell it, and then it goes away. So, that's definitely the don't want to bother somebody, but want to get that feeling. So, yeah, 20 minutes, it is completely gone.
And Joe, I'm sorry I don't know what happened to you earlier, but you were talking about the leathers, and let's revisit that for just a minute. I would like to hear which leather scents you found that you did like. We're not here to talk necessarily about beard products, but that's where our conversation is right now.
I did not find a singular leather beard product that I liked. Some I didn't. Okay, let me phrase it this way. It's not that I dislike it, but it would definitely not be on my mind of wares. Okay, it would definitely be at the back shelf or the second shelf kind of thing. And if it used that new leather, I don't know what it is, but it's that very pungent, in your face, I can't smell anything else leather, as opposed to that like rawhide or baseball mitt leather. I wouldn't wear the new leather at all, but I would wear the rawhidey, kind of old worked in leather. And in the colognes, it's just not an issue. Now, I'm still fragrance purchasing is a costly endeavor, as we all. I want to give a quick shout out here to Andy and to my guy Bearded and Winning Brian. They both kind of helped me out as far as like where to go to purchase, things to look for, things to do, because we have our own. Oh, and Bearded Mixologist too, John. We've in the DMs, we all have our little mini community where we're talking and advising and doing those kinds of things to help economically and to share scent ideas. But with the leathers that I have tried, and the one that sticks out because it's supposed to be a total leather scent is a scent called Polo Supreme Leather from, Ralph Lauren, the Polo line. And he made 3: Supreme Oud, Supreme Cashmere, and Supreme Leather. And these are supposed to be kind of like Polo probably runs you, I don't know, 50, 60 retail these days, maybe a little more, but these Supremes were kind of a notch above. All right. So they would run you like 90 to 100. I didn't pay that. I was able to get a smaller size because I wanted to try it because it's leather and I was feeling a little sheepish about it, but I do like many Polo scents. And it was creamy and mellow and detectable, but not obnoxiously loud. And I was just on my arm all day long. I wish it threw out a little more, had a little more silage, that so that I wouldn't necessarily have to do that. And I wish it had a little more longevity. It started to die down. It didn't keep that same strength. But those are my only critiques. So that's just personal. As far as the scent itself, to me, it was gorgeous. And it really opened the door for now. I'm looking for more leathers at the top of the note chain.
As far as the beard products go, I've always looked for anything that had leather. If I was to like it, and I don't like many, it had to be more complex, and it had to be a good mix, and the leather couldn't be forward. I'm okay to smell the leather in it, but I don't want it to be the only thing I smell. And just off the top of my head, the two that are pretty complex that come to my mind that I actually enjoy, that I would go to and use on a regular basis, would be the Bearded Mac, the Roaring 20s, and then the Whiskey and Hardtack's Nighthawk. Nighthawk's one of the best scents I've ever smelled in my life, and it does smell very much like a man's perfume cologne kind of idea.
Yeah, I've tried Roaring 20s, and it is good. It is a good scent. And it made me like most of the things I'm gravitating towards are the same things I gravitated towards in the beard world. The darker things, the tobaccos, the leathers, the incense, spices. I'm looking for those kinds of mixes. The ambers, things like that. Musks, even though those are a little sweeter, but they still kind of have that dark heart to them. But it's also made me realize that, like what Andy was saying, you had those guys in the 80s that were loud and you could smell them 5 miles away, and how you can't anymore. Like I've had some lovely tobacco scents, and I'm thinking, because I bought a lot of tobacco beard scents, and I'm thinking, what could I pair this with? And it's difficult just because, like, I think of the Tobacconist by, from Lux, which is a scent I adore. It's my number one tobacco scent. But it's so strong and loud, you couldn't pair it with any of the colognes that I've tried thus far, because it would just overpower them. You would not get any of the scent from the actual fragrance. You'd be smelling Lux the whole entire time. And what was a positive when I was doing beard stuff, because, I like those big, bold things, is more of a negative if I want to pair my beard stuff, because I try to stay away from more muted scents. Mm-hmm. So I kind of rob myself of that knowledge as far as just the pairing goes. But I'm less worried about that because I know I can get fragrance-free oil and butter, and I'm okay with just going that route. My beard collection was shrinking as it was. I was going to keep some specials, but now that I'm more into cologne, into fragrance, I don't mind them all going by the wayside or me giving them away, and I just go unscented the rest of my life.
Yeah. And why you say tobaccos, I'll throw out Damn Yankee from Pete. He does a lot of different tobacco. He's got like 5 different ones. So he's got one with chocolate and cherry. He's got tobacco bay leaf. He's got cedar tobacco, vanilla. He's got a tobacco and like dried fruit kind of idea going along with it with Cavendish. He's got a lot of different things. It come to mind when you said the tobaccos.
One thing that you're running into, Joe, is first to go back to the leather real quick. So leather is a core. It's not like
leather
they
is
take
a whore?
a leather, put it in a tincture or whatever. Did you hear me? You know which owner, the owner I'm talking to. If they're listening, you know who I'm talking to. You don't put leather out of a barn, soak it in alcohol to get a leather scent. It's in a core. Okay, so don't do that. There's very, very bad stuff in leather. Don't try to make it yourself at home. Anyway, but yeah, there's so the different terms for leather that Joe was referring to, that really wild and funky smell is animalic. The more rawhide, most of the time, whenever you're dealing with professional perfumers, they want that medley of things going on, not a in-your-face kind of experience. So even if you get to change exact scent, but patchouli, even if you're looking for a really, really strong patchouli, it won't be that hippie head shop. It'll be an array or something built around patchouli. Tobacco, most beard companies, they're really only using it's called pipe tobacco, and there's a specific essential or fragrance oil that they're using, they're pretty much using just that same one. The reason perfumes, fragrances are different is because they use different parts of the plant. So for me, I love tobacco, but I prefer that dry, grassy tobacco as opposed to that really, really sweet pipe tobacco smell. So, but yeah, I agree with you. It's been really difficult the more you learn about fragrances, it gets harder to be satisfied with most of the offerings. Now, there are some guys out there that do some really, really good work. So by all means, don't take this as Andy's bagging on the entire industry. Because there are some out there that do some really, really good work. Really, really good work. And I'm proud to say that I collaborate isn't the right word. I consult with 2 or 3 of them. And we're always working on building a top, a middle, and a base so that it does evolve as it dries down. It's difficult to do that with beard products because they are using more essential oils, fewer aroma chemicals. And so it's very difficult for, some years ago, there was a lot of talk about, this is just leaving vapors. It's really difficult for a beard product to be much more than a skin scent to other people.
Don't tell my wife that because she could smell it a mile away.
No, that's not to say it's impossible. And especially if it's something that they don't like. I mean, if it's something that you don't agree with, you will pick it up a whole lot quicker than you will something that's very pleasant to you.
True.
But yeah, there's a lot to it. It's definitely balancing science and art, and I think that's the cool thing about it.
That's neat.
Yeah. Shoot, Andy, you said something that made me. The melody. Yeah. You'll get scents called patchouli or vetiver or leather, and you go in being a beard guy with this preconceived notion, and you get in there and you're like, okay, I can get that scent, but it's not whacking me upside the head. So you just like that supreme leather I was talking about from Polo. I got the leather, but that's not what I got. It's all blended in the tobacco scents. It's all kinds of things playing around. And so that's kind of fun too, because I immediately gravitated towards some vetiver scents that I haven't purchased yet because I like the smoky, but not the campfire heavy smoke, but just the smokiness to vetiver. And then as I was reading, kind of like exactly what Andy says, vetiver has other components to it that we don't see as much in the beard game. There are like sweet aspects to vetiver and the grassy aspects to vetiver. And then there's the smoky. So when you're getting a vetiver as a fragrance, you're not necessarily going to get that smoky vibe that you may have gotten used to with beard oil. So, but yes, it is all about I have yet to smell anything that is just one note and not other things going on. And even when you get something, there's a scent out there called Spice Bomb, which automatically goes to me. It is, man. It is a bomb of spices. But even in all those spices, you can't say, oh, this is a cinnamon forward scent or a coriander. Or you can't pick out one. It's just a lot of them that are just coming and going spicy right at you. And I kind of like that, because I got enough of these single dual scent forward stuff in the beard world. And now it's fun to play around. And just last thing, Brian, going back to Dan Yankee, I'm glad you mentioned him because Pete's scents are a little more pulled back. So his might be something you could pair with a slightly stronger tobacco fragrance because his aren't so overpowering. And I do have I think 4 Dan Yankee tobacco scents. I don't know what's still surviving. I know I still got Cavendish because I like that one and I got 2 bottles of it. So yeah, I may have to pair some of those up.
You got 3?
I got 3. Yeah.
I don't know how many I've got. I got about all of them.
Pete has really, over the last couple of years, he didn't start off being bad. He started off pretty good, But as he and I worked on one called Lover's Rock, which was I get 5% of the credit, maybe 4% of the credit. The other 96% is him. But he has a lot of versatility, and I'm hopeful that guys like Pete, like Chris Mack from Bearded Mac, and some of these other companies, they keep pushing the boundaries, because the number one thing, and I actually had a very respected beer company owner tell me that the feedback they get is everybody says they want something different, but when you give it to them, they don't want it because it's unfamiliar. So they are kind of, it's very different than the fragrance world, because in the fragrance world, when you go for something, unless you are really, really dialing in on a particular note, you want something that smells different. But beard products, which are, again, mostly skin scents. Oh, and wanted to add too, Joe does mostly unscented. I do mostly like barbershops. That's
with
what I do.
A clean smell.
The clean smell that tends to fade pretty quick. Very rare that I have a powdery barbershop anyway.
Yeah, I don't like
I will every now and again throw one in there, though, just because it matches up with what I got. But yeah.
Yeah, interesting about the what you said, and I think of some guys who are established and they don't mind putting out stuff that they don't think everybody's going to like. They don't play it safe. So you mentioned Pete, and then Adam over at Hanyaker.
That way.
Yep.
Hanyaker's that way.
But I do think they're all getting better, because a lot of them do those custom scents. And that really challenges them. And I know they do a custom scent or a scent of the month, those kind of things. And they are, even though in some people's opinions they might be putting out too many different scents, but they are working and they're trying different things. And people are challenging them to come up with scent profiles. Like, Jimmy over at Ruddy Man, he puts dirt and everything else kind of scents, and I would not think it comes out good at all. And he's surprising me every time about how smooth his blends are, which is kind of a different story than what we're talking about with these other people. But I do think they are all getting better, and they're all trying different things and evolving. And it's really good to see, like Justin at Iowa, you look at his scent profiles now and it's got like 10 different things listed. Yeah. And he's really going with a little bit different direction now than what he was a long time ago.
And I wanted to make sure we brought up Justin, because I've seen a lot of evolution in his work over the last couple of years too. So even if I don't, obviously when there's so many companies out there, you pretty much have to limit yourself. Even in my wide open days, I still had to limit myself, but I definitely keep an eye on these companies to see what their components they're working with. Justin, I think he might be it may not be this year. It all comes down to getting that one hit, but I think he is a hit from being a major player. Really impressed with the work that he does.
So I got a question for you guys. Since you're the parfum experts, because it reminds me of when I was younger, and I think I went to buy my mother some perfume, and you had two different ones. You had I guess it was the pure perfume, which costs like 3 times as much, and then you had the toilet water, the Eau de Toilette spray. What's the difference between those? Is it just the concentration, or is that even a thing anymore? But I just remember seeing that. One of my memories.
Theoretically, it's the concentration, but it also has a lot to do with how much they're spending on marketing. They probably spend more on the bottle than they do the contents, and they definitely spend more on the marketing than they do on the bottle. I've seen estimates where a bottle of fragrance, whether it be perfume or for men or for women, cost as little as I've seen $2, I've seen $3, I've seen it $20, and obviously that would be the more elaborate packaging, and they sell it for a couple $100, $300, $400. The most expensive fragrance is by Clive Christian, and I'm not sure how big the bottle is, but it's 12 grand US. So, yeah,
Too
obviously
fancy for
the
me.
sky's the limit.
But this, and I was just reading about this in the history book, that goes back to Chanel and the idea of luxury when perfumery started like really taking off in the mid 20th century, and Chanel saying, I want something that is unaffordable, because it then gets, if you own it, it's then a stamp of luxury, you know, and
Makes it unique too, because nobody else can afford it. It makes it unique.
Yeah. Well, look, Brian, we could go off for another half hour here because there's a lot here, but most of the stuff you get at a department store is, and correct me if I'm wrong, Andy, because I haven't been in a department store, but I've been doing a lot of online research, is probably in that, I don't know, 70, 80 to 100, 110 range. You know, maybe when we're talking about them houses that everyone knows, Dolce & Gabbana, Gucci, Yves Saint Laurent, all those standard houses that are always producing stuff. Now, the one thing I found about in that I don't like, because I think it's just a total money grab, is you'll get a scent, like let's say that's popular, and then they will do like 4, 5, 8, 10 riffs of that same scent. And I'm just like, just give me the damn scent I like. Now, you may find that 1 or 2 of those riffs are pretty good in and amongst themselves. They kind of use that base DNA, and then maybe they make, let's say it's a deeper like tobacco scent, you know, a date night kind of scent. Maybe they make a sporty version of it, or maybe they make a spice. You know, they just do little tweaks on it. But when you're talking $80 a bottle every single freaking time, that starts to add up. So that's something I'm not very enamored with the fragrance world. You guys are saying some stuff. First thing, when it comes to the leather, you were talking about Ruddy Man. Even though it was a little more in your face, his ringside, I believe it was called. That was one of the few leather scents I could wear and enjoy. But that leather was forward, but the way he blended it, it was really, really nice.
But the other thing is that painted a picture, and the scent matched the picture that he was painting with the ringside.
Yeah.
And that to me, okay, I'm expecting that kind of leather. It works because it matches what I was expecting.
Right.
Keep in mind though, the something that they've started doing the last couple of years is they will have what appears to be a flanker. It'll be in a different concentration, and it'll be a completely different animal.
Yeah.
It won't have anything to do, and they're playing off of the name recognition of the one success, that came before. Yep. Has no completely different kind of scent for completely different locations. So really, since we are talking about a lot more money than just a $15 to $20 beard oil, if you are interested in a fragrance, definitely do your research on it. Sample it first. If you can find it at a department store or wherever, try that first. If you can't, there are ways that you can get smaller samples and save yourself a lot of time, energy, effort, headache, and all of that. Yeah. So that's something that I came to late.
Yeah, I'm going anyway. We'll talk about what I'm going somewhere down the line. But those terms you were mentioning, Brian, they've been abbreviated to EDT and EDP, Eau de Parfum and Eau de Toilette. Mm-hmm. And Andy is right, because you'll hear reviewers say, you know, they'll get this flanker, and a flanker just means one of those variants I was talking about. So you have Dolce & Gabbana, the one, and then you have the 9 flankers that go with it or whatever, okay? But you'll hear reviewers say, okay, so get variant number 3 here, but make sure you get the EDP, not the EDT. So now you can't just look at the flankers little twist off of it, but you got to look at the concentration. And it's very important to do. Andy's right. You got to do your research, or you're going to be dropping serious cash just because you messed up on a few letters. You know what I mean? That's what it can boil down to. Last thing I wanted to say that you reminded me, and this was not this year's March Madness, but last year's March Madness you did. You recommended Iowa's Relentless to me, which I then picked up. And I also picked up Prospector. Those are 2 kinds of scents that based on what I'm buying fragrance wise, I can see that they're going to find their niche into one of my fragrances just because of how they're built and the complexity in there and those actual notes. And then with Hanyaker is who I'm going to keep the most of because all of his scents are very, very good complex wise, but he plays with, he's got the incense scent and he's got the tobacco. But the two new ones I was really salivating over because when I looked at their profiles, I was like, well, that sounds like a lot of the stuff I'm buying. So I may have to, I'm pretty much done with the beard world except for like Adam and maybe a couple other companies. But Adam, again, he kind of toes that line. It's there, but it's not too forward where I think it would overpower the fragrance. So he's a house, the house of Hanyaker, if you will. He's a house I'm looking to stay with.
And by the time we release this video, I will have released my Hanyaker video with the brand new 2 scents that'll be available. So I really enjoyed the Menage a Trois is the name of that one. That was very good. Very good scent.
We should all just get that one because, we're a threesome of dudes here.
There you go.
But I look forward to that, Brian, because I saw you drop that tease that you were going to review them, and I'm very interested to see what they smell like before I purchase them.
Well, one of them's patchouli forward, which doesn't work for me. The other one's good. So I'll give it away. It'll be out at this point. I've got a question for you, Joe. You've been watching some reviews of the perfume, the cologne stuff. How are you finding those reviews? I know you've been in the beard world for a couple years, like compare and contrast kind of what they do when they go over stuff.
Yeah, it's funny because this is where Andy and I have been sharing some information and going back and forth. So there's one guy that's like, if Dan C were in the fragrance world, although he's not really like it, but he's got the most subs, and I don't watch him at all. That's that Jeremy dude. Jeremy Fragrance, Andy. Do you know him?
Oh, I would not. I wouldn't. I would say Dan is more like Ash from Gent Sense. Yeah.
Yes.
Not Jeremy Fragrance. Jeremy Fragrance is. Okay, so Jeremy Fragrance he's not, his lineage isn't German, but he lives in Germany, grew up in Germany, and he is just wild, animated, very bombastic, and but he tends to.
So he's like me, is what you're saying.
Actually, if I think you would be kind of an Ash type, yeah, because Ash is very thorough. He doesn't use a lot of jargon. And when he uses jargon that he hasn't said 1,000 times, he will explain it. So you and Dan both are more of explainers.
Yeah, more the teachers.
Yeah. Now keep in mind that the fragrance industry is so much bigger than the beard care industry. So Dan is Scuba, maybe to an extent, Jeremy Sears, have had a few million view posts. But a lot of those guys have 150, 200,000. Jeremy Fragrance has probably a million subscribers. So it's kind of apples and oranges, really.
Yeah. Yes, it really is. But yeah, I'm with Andy. This guy Ash would be you or Dan C. And I like him. My only problem with him is he does, again, when you're constantly having to produce content. He's doing a video a day, sometimes 2 a day. Wow. He has some good ideas, but I hear now he's been doing this for 5-6 years, so he's got a ton of videos. But the videos that I gravitate to, I kind of keep hearing the same sense over and over a lot of the time. So I'm not getting the breadth I would want. But he does things like he'll go cheapy looking and hidden gem looking, and I like all that kind of stuff. So I like him for that. Then Andy turned me on to a guy who does a lot of off the beaten path kind of sense, and he's a musician. And he's very intellectual about it, and he's got a very intellectual tone, and I really like him. But he's talking about $200 and $300 and $400 scents that I'll never buy, and that I may not even be able to get a decant for a cheaper, smaller amount. Something that looks like this,
right?
Or of a $400 scent that may cost me $30, $25. And they're called niche, Brian, and there are a number that a lot of people know about. Well, this guy, Justin, he's talking about stuff that is niche,
Micro
that people
niche.
really like his style, and I'll watch his reviews even if I won't buy those fragrances because he's just compelling, and I like to hear what he says.
Yeah, send me a link to that because I want to check that out, Joe. I'm more interested in like, how do you describe a cologne? I mean, and compared to the beard oil, it's like so different. Like you got food scents and all that kind of stuff. If you have something that most beard guys would just call a cologne, how do you get to the subtleties and the nuance of that?
Yeah.
Another guy to check out, and if we were trying to categorize him, there's no one-to-one as far as a beard reviewer, but the guy that is kind of the professor in a lot of ways, because he does ramble, but he talks about scents that nobody else talks about, but you learn a lot listening to him, and he is simply the perfume guy, and that's his name on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I'm not sure exactly what his business is, but it sounds like he's almost a fragrance consultant in San Francisco. So he has just an unbelievable collection of scents. The guy that we were talking about first, Ash, he has thousands of bottles as well, which thankfully, perfume cologne will last forever if you keep it in the right environment. So not like beard product, which will go bad no matter how good they are.
In that case, it does make sense to have them around, especially if you're trying to compare scents and that kind of thing. I just have so much beard stuff that it goes bad that I just clean out stuff about once a quarter. I have to take out trash bags full of stuff.
I'll tell you, Brian, one of the great resources is this website called Fragrantica, where you put in the name of the fragrance and it breaks it down in order of the most to the least. And they use adjectives that to me seem to be pretty industry wide, as far as the other reviewers are using these adjectives too. And it really helps. Like if I took my nose and put it to a cologne scent now, I could go around and probably get something more focused than cologne. Okay. Mm-hmm. But adjectives like Andy just dropped one, animalic, something that's kind of, it reminds you of the smells of an animal. Okay. Whether it's castor out of a beaver or civet or things like that. Powdery is another one you don't hear often in the beard world. And sometimes they'll just come straight out and say something like patchouli because it's a nice scent. But then there's fresh spices, there's warm spices, there's green, there's ozonic or aquatic. Those tend to go with water scents. All right. So there's all these adjectives that when you, like, for example, I'm wearing a water scent right now, and I don't have a lot of experience, but you have marine, aquatic, and ozonic. And marine would be more of that salt vibe to it, the smell like the sea rather than a lake or is that what you would say, Andy? Marine definitely would have that deep sea kind of vibe to it.
Which is different than your lake stone. I smell stuff that smells like lake stone, which is different.
Yeah. So if you just threw a couple of scents in there just to look at those adjectives, then you can start conceptualizing those adjectives. And then when you get things into your nose and you hear it described, you hear Ash go, he's smelling his stripper, he's smelling his arm. He's like, I get some ozonic in here. I get the bergamot off the top. I mean, these guys' nose are so trained that they can sit there and truly break it down. But even if you can't pick out exactly what citrus it is, you could say, it's highly citrusy and stuff, which you already do. But some of those other adjectives, I think, help into getting into, well, this is a cologne scent. Because even all the colognes are made up of various aroma components. And so as a reviewer, you got to break those down specifically, or at least in an adjective form.
Yeah, that sounds like a totally different audience who's watching those videos, obviously, and than what I'm trying to do for the, the general person in the beer community. But I do struggle sometimes with some of these scents on how to break them down and explain them.
I think though, to a certain extent, though, there would be now. Obviously, you can get too far into it, and it would leave was applicable to the beard community. But I agree with Joe 100% as far as, okay, so in fragrances, they talk about green scents. So what do you think of when you think green? You think fresh, you think maybe herbal, outdoorsy. So green, whenever they say it's green, that's what they're referencing. Something like lemon verbena or rosemary. Some of the herbs. Some of the herbs get more into herbal, but as far as being able to describe the different woodsy notes. So beard oils use a lot of woodsy note, predominantly cedar, so I was playing around mixing some aroma chemicals together, and I got lazy with my labeling, and I thought I was picking up something that I had mixed together. What I picked up was 100% pure cedar. And so I took a big old whiff of straight cedar. I couldn't smell, the entire world smelled like a cedar closet for 3 or 4 days. And yes, there are owners that when they hear me say this, you told me about that. And I was worthless. All the projects I was helping consult on, I thought, man, you're just going to have to. But part of it, though, the part that I like about it is the experiential part. So if you have a Lowe's or a hardware store that has a floral section or a plant section, and you can go and you can smell jasmine, or you can go and smell carnation, which is something that was used a lot in men's fragrances back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. You don't really see it all that much anymore. You'll see rose pop up in men's fragrances, which there are several different varieties of rose. So in this case, a rose is not necessarily a rose as a rose as a rose. And it's really interesting when you see guys using these different elements. Now, for beard company owners, the problem that they have is, the dirty little secret is, there's like maybe a handful of big suppliers that everybody uses. So, and also beard company owners tend to buy blends. So they don't
it's not just one thing. It's already a mixture of something when you get it.
Or just vetiver or just oak moss. It'll be 2 or 3 things mixed together. And I'm going to go ahead, and I've talked about it before, and it's been mentioned before. You can buy clones of popular men's fragrances. Here's the thing, fellas. Don't be like me. It took me actually going out there and trying the real thing to realize that those clones smell nothing like, and I have yet to find one that's even 10% as good as what they're supposed to be mimicking. Even if you just, go to the department store and get a sample sprayed on a test strip, not even asking you to buy anything, but just put a sample on a test strip, you will immediately know, oh my God, this stuff smells amazing. And the product that I thought was smelling like it kind of smells terrible.
That's interesting.
One other thing, Brian, rose, weirdly from a beard world context, rose is often paired with oud in fragrances. Rose and oud seem to be like tobacco and vanilla. They just, with certain houses, not everybody, but certain houses, and there's a big Middle East contingent of fragrance makers too. You have France and Italy and the United States. And a lot of those Middle Eastern houses and some of the European ones, when you see an oud, you won't be surprised if there's a rose riding shotgun right along with it.
And so the big shocker that's going to come out of this video, and you might actually want to earmark it. So, dirty little secret. I like oud in fragrances. I hate oud in beard oil, and I can explain why.
Let's
I can
hear it.
explain why. Oud is a scent that when it is in the air is extremely appealing. It does leave a sillage, which is a French word for vapors. Okay. And it smells extremely good in the air. It does pair very, very well with rose. It also pairs very well with saffron. You'll see one or two of those combined a lot. But oud on skin, whether it's a cologne or a beard oil, has that funky animalic smell. It smells like a barnyard animal, or it smells like just musky and funky. So, but that's the same way. Whenever I put on, I got a really, really nice that I wear whenever I want to get attention. And I mean, I can just make the whole house smell wonderful without even overdoing it. So yeah, there's your shocker. But while we're talking about that, so a lot of guys are under the impression, owners too, that, oh, this is a different kind of oud. This is pumpkin oud or birchwood oud.
Yeah.
That's oud plus birch. That's
right.
Pumpkin. That's not. Now there are obviously you've got real agar
black
wood.
oud. Have I heard black oud?
It's all either agar wood derived oud or it's the synthetic form.
Yeah.
That's all it is, and then they're adding stuff to it to try to tame it or to try to change it.
Seems
But
like
yeah,
the very first oud I had was that kind of natural, kind of, funky, smelled like, dirt, rotten wood kind of stuff. But all the rest of it I've had since then has been that birchwood kind of sweet oud. It kind of smells like a sweet cologne is what it turns into. But I don't think the natural oud smells like that.
Because it's been tamed down. Yeah, because it's been tamed down. But also, and this was an old pet peeve, and I got a buddy who's in Rome, Georgia. I used to give him hell about this. And there's other people that are more or less prominent that do the same thing. You have to take the beard oil out of the bottle. At the very least, put it on your wrist and rub it, or put it on your wrist, just dab it on and let it dry down and see what it does. You cannot go just by snipping it in the bottle.
Yeah, I remember some of Joe's epic unboxings, and he'd have stuff all up and down both arms. He was like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can't just leave it in the bottle. One thing I wanted to say is oud is one of those things I for whatever reason, it just wasn't for me in the beard products, but I've got like 4 or 5 small samples on order with various mixtures of oud. I'm looking to see how it works for me, in this world. And damn it, Andy, you said something again. Oh, I will say, but this is getting seriously micro. I will say I have seen a couple of ouds, Andy, that have countries attached to them, like Cambodian oud or this and that. And allegedly, agarwood is usually thought of in the Middle East, so it's kind of like a drier climb. But allegedly, in some of these places where it grows in wetter climes, it can affect the aroma in a slight way. So if you have a super trained nose, you might pick it up. Maybe it's a little more green coming from a wetter country than it would be coming from the Middle East or something. But that's a highly trained nose that could get that distinction. But in scent breakdowns, like most of them is agarwood, but sometimes it's like Cambodian agarwood.
Well, now they use it a lot in Middle Eastern perfumery, but it doesn't come from the Middle East. This agar tree only comes from that Asian Pacific area that Cambodia, Laos, maybe Korea, maybe some parts of the Philippines. It only comes from that area of the world. They just love it in the Middle East, and so
I assumed it was originally from there.
Yeah, no. They, as far as I know, unless it's been domesticated in some kind of way, and that would be kind of a hard thing to pull off to grow a tropical tree in a
Yeah.
in an arid climate. That'd be pretty. But it's just like anything else. I mean, most of our spices, I think something like 97% of the world's vanilla actually comes from a single tree in Madagascar.
Yeah.
So it's that same kind of thing. So most, which is why a company owner put out a post the other day, kind of making fun of an issue that we've talked about in the past about how specific ingredients come from specific parts of the world. Not all of them, but there's a lot of them. They only come from one small area. And how some company owners try to make something sound more important than it is by saying it's Madagascar vanilla. Well, yes, so the vanilla that's in your pantry, it's all Madagascar vanilla for the most part. I mean, it all comes from one daggum tree. So, it's marketing, or it's that person not knowing, and maybe they're getting duped. Maybe they think they're getting something special. But now, with the perfumers, with the level of expertise that they have and the amount of money that they're spending, I'm pretty sure they know what they're talking about. If you look at which again, and I know this is going to make your nose wrinkle, but ambergris. If you look at how much that junk costs, they're serious.
Yeah. Yeah. And it used to be a huge component way back. In fact, I remember ambergris was one of those things I remember from like childhood learning, like they use that in perfumes. Doesn't seem like it should go there. Brian, I wanted to say one other thing too, for anyone who's watching this video and might be thinking about getting into fragrances a little bit. Because I didn't know this till I started doing my deep dive. Two things. Andy kind of just referenced it with beard oil. Number one, you spray that fragrance, you spray it on a strip, but that first thing, that's called the opening, that's not what it's going to smell like down the road. You let it rest, you let it dry. It's called the dry down. And then if you like it, it's going to behave a little bit differently on skin than it is paper. So you want to make sure you try it on your skin, because we could all wear the same cologne, and but our biochemistry, our body is going to react with it, and it might smell just a little bit different. I'm sure you've heard stories, but that's the one thing you want to do is don't take the first spritz when you're at a department store as thinking that's what it's going to smell like for the rest of the day, because it's not. And something else that I never realized, Andy, is it's okay to re-spritz, kind of like we sometimes re-up with weaker beard oils. I always thought like you put it on and you go for the day. Well, maybe with some you do. Maybe some have that kind of longevity, but sometimes, particularly a lighter scent like a sporty scent or a spring summer scent, you're going to have to redo that thing maybe once, even twice, depending on how long you want to be and how active you are that day. You're going to have to refresh that. So it's okay. You just don't want to douse yourself with it.
Well, what I've noticed too is depending upon when I put it on. So like with beard oil, my beard soaks up a lot of it. So, which is surprising because you would think gray hair, it doesn't absorb a lot, but it really does. Well, when I put on a fragrance, a cologne or eau de toilette, my personal favorite, I tend to be the EDP guy. I tend to like the stronger. They don't project as loud. They don't have that sillage. They stick more to the skin, but they also tend to be more mature. So if you're an older guy and you've smelled something in the EDT, which is the eau de toilette, or in the cologne, it wouldn't hurt. It wouldn't be a waste of your time to take a sniff of the EDP, which is the eau de parfum, PARFUM, or the parfum version of it. You might not like it, but it will definitely have a different kind of vibe. But anyway, so if I put it on right after I get out of the shower, unless it is that aforementioned oud that I was talking about, or some of the ones that I have that are really, really, the term is beast mode, which is something that if you get into this at all, you'll see that come up. Unless it is one of those that's specifically designed to be loud, they go to skin scent very quickly on me. But if I wait a few hours and my body's natural oils have had a chance to produce again, and I spray it on, they tend to be more present. They tend to be. And if I reapply, be careful with reapplying. It's perfectly okay to reapply some of those lighter summer scents, but if you reapply a heavy winter scent, like an amber or something along those lines, you will really project and you will choke people out. So best start off small and work your way up to it. It's the best advice I can give you, just like with beard oil. I know exactly how much beard oil is going to take from me. Right. It varies from company to company, time of year, climate, all that kind of stuff. But I know I'm pretty much going to be between 1.25 millimeters to 1.75 millimeters. Well, you'll see guys that have a beard as long or longer than mine. They'll say, oh, you just get a dime size. That dime would not go very far for me. Wouldn't go very far. So it really does depend on, it comes down to you figuring out what works for you. But that's part of the cool thing too, because we celebrate our individuality, and your body chemistry is, whether you like it or not, uniquely yours. And so what works for your buddies may not work for you.
Yeah. Yeah, and another set of terms that's more for the consumer, Brian, and you might have heard Andy and I dropping them, is these terms that let you know, just based on the term, on the adjective, how strong this scent is probably going to be out of bottle and on your skin. So spring and summer and sporty scents are going to tend to be lighter and fresher and probably not last as long. Evening scents or fall or winter scents, those are going to be a little stronger, cut through that cold air, et cetera. But the one I love the most is an office scent. All right, so an office scent is supposed to smell sophisticated and very good, but being in a crowded office, it's not going to project a ton. It's safe to wear at the office. So that's always, and I think those are almost like the traditional colognes. We kind of think they don't have to be, but when you hear an office scent, that's a great little marker to say, oh, so this is something I wear at work, and this is something I wear, the nighttime scent. That's something I'm going to wear on my date, or if I'm going out clubbing or whatever. And some people even say it's a club scent because it's so strong and so loud, and you want to project and gather attention. So those are all neat consumer terms, so you can kind of get an idea right before you even purchase how strong this scent should be on average.
It sounds interesting. I can just only imagine the research and development that goes into this, especially the bigger companies that have access to labs where they could synthetically make things that mimic, the real thing itself, and just all the different possibilities. My math brain's exploding.
Interestingly enough, you bring that up. So there's two main colleges, and I mean full-on universities. One is in France. There's several in France, and then there's one in Italy. Most of the designer level, big popular colognes that you can name, there's really only about 5 or 6 perfume houses that make those, and they make them for all of these different designers. So you will see, and again, this is a little bit further into the weeds than I'm at right now, but there are certain perfumers who are considered master perfumers that have made a number of different really popular fragrances for a number of different companies. So you'll see that if you get more into it. I'm not at that point where I say, oh, yes, I know this guy. He made all this, and this, and I really like his style. I'm not that far into it yet. I'm much more the science part of it. I'm not interested in creating nose stars, smell stars, that are rock stars. That's awkward. But anyway, yeah, you know what I mean.
You guys have anything else you want to talk about?
Well, I'm glad we managed when we had nothing to talk about to start, and you just let these two blowhards go on autopilot, and then we were able to keep it going for a while.
Oh,
because
we could definitely keep it going. That's very interesting. Very interesting. I'm sure there's some people that are going to really get into this and do some deep dives on it as well.
I hope they do. And you could always DM me. I don't want to speak for Andy because he's important over there. But you could always DM me if you had any questions. I'm far from an expert. I'm barely approaching novicehood. But what I have done, as far as like smelling lots of different scents, I'm starting to build my collection. But what I have done is a lot of research, and I'm currently reading some books because that's the teacher in me. I want to know as much as I can out there, and I know the experimentation will come along with my pocketbook disintegrating.
I think the two main takeaways, depending on the target audience. So for reviewers, I would say learning these descriptors, like you were talking about, Brian, being able to, if you looked up the note breakdown of something that was in the department store, and you can see, okay, I'm supposed to be smelling bergamot up top, and you sniff that and you kind of catch that orange bitter scent, kind of soury citrus. Okay, that's bergamot. So boom, you know what that is. And that's a really common one. Most beer company owners use that. And there are some that are really distinctive that you know automatically. But for you guys, it would be a way to improve your vernacular, your vocabulary on how you describe things, especially for beer products, because they are pretty much, there are some like Lux and Hanyaker especially that will use ingredients that they won't put on the label. They won't tell you every single note in there. And coincidentally, they happen to be some of the more sophisticated builders out there. But for the beer company owners, I would say that hopefully it will open up the world to you a little bit more and get you to realize that you don't have to keep using the same 2, 3, 4 profiles and trying to reinvent the wheels. But there are a lot of different things out there. Some of these ingredients are really easy to use. Some of them are more challenging. But you can use a site like Fragrantica to say, okay, well, 100 different companies or 100 different fragrances use these two things together. They must kind of go together. Let me try that and see what I can do with it. And so hopefully foster some of that creativity, even if you are. So there are some of the classic fragrances that have a note listing of like 30 or 40 different things. Obviously, nobody in the beard care industry has that kind of money and resources to be able to put those many components together. Plus, you're competing against the natural aroma of the oil. So there are some that aren't going to lend themselves very well. I mean, alcohol and water is a pretty neutral background. Some of the carrier oils
that's a
really
good point.
They really have a pungent, they have a smell to them. Not always pungent, but they have a smell.
Yeah, it depends on which carriers are in there, and some of them I've grown to like. It's like I love the good unscented. I can smell some of those carriers that I like, and then some of them are like bad. It's like, don't make this unscented because it's bad. But anyway, guys, I hope you have enjoyed this deep dive. I know that I have. I've learned a little something, and I will put everybody's Instagram handle down below in the description so you can check that out. You can DM Joe and Andy if you've got more questions, or if companies you want Andy or Joe to consult. Now, the price is high, but I think you might could convince them to do it. And also be looking for our Grumpy Men colognes coming out soon. Just kidding on that. But until we see you again, we hope you have a good day.
Have a good one.